Good day, everyone, and welcome to the next day of our webinar. So, of course, today we are going to talk about another topic. We have yesterday about with me about how to make an action research questions, and today we are going to talk about preparing data for analysis. So again, I am Warner Reponte, and I am a teacher, a senior high school teacher from Sultan Ali Dimaporo Memorial Integrated School. So of course, today's objectives is there are a lot of objectives that we're going to achieve for today's discussion. The first is to identify documents and materials that can be used as data or sources of data. So of course, as an action researcher or as a researcher itself, we need to have data for our study. So with that, we're going to identify ano po yung mga documents na pwede nating gamitin for our study or for our research. Next, we're going to differentiate primary and secondary sources. I have mentioned already the sources of data. So mayroon po pa dalawang sources ng data natin, which is the primary and secondary sources. Next is we're going to justify the importance of external and internal criticism when using documents and materials as data or sources of data. So before we are going to use the data or the sources, the primary and secondary sources, we need to have an external and internal criticism muna para siya i-include sa study natin. And then lastly, we're going to select documents and materials that can serve as data and or major sources of data according to action research topics. So like what I have mentioned earlier, there are materials or documents or data that you have as an action researcher. So we're going to select which data should be used and then prepare for analysis. So our main topic is preparing your data for analysis. Hindi po muna nag-analyze, but you are going to prepare po muna on analyzing for preparation for analysis. Okay, so let's move on. Why do we need to prepare the data? So sorry about that. Why we need to prepare data? These are the three main reasons for me. First is it fixes errors quickly. Kasi if we don't prepare our data, when we run it or when we analyze it, baka merong result na hindi mo gusto because merong kamalian na nagawa sa data mo because you did not prepare for it. Next is to produce top quality data. So like what I have mentioned, it is better for us to prepare data before analysis for us to have a top quality data. Para sure yung data mo is from the respondents and they answered it. They answered maybe your survey questionnaire fully at wala pong errors. And then lastly, if you already have, if you're confident with your data, kasi na-prepare mo na, walang errors, and then you have already a good data, then that's the last part na pwede nating magawa is their decisions. So out of that, makakagawa ka na ng decision based on your study or based on the data na nirun mo or na analyze mo. Okay? So yes. So of course, the key for this topic is first one, documents and materials can be used as data or sources of data. I have mentioned already that there are a lot of documents and sources that could be used. I have mentioned the two, the primary and secondary. And next, let's go to next, which is stated. There are primary and secondary documentary and material sources, and each of these should undergo both external and internal criticism prior to inclusion as data and or source of data for the action research. Kaya nga nung sabi ko, meron tayong data or sources of data dalawa, primary and secondary. Before you will include the primary and secondary po, you have to, sorry, you have to undergo it external and internal criticism before you include it in your action research. Okay, and lastly, I have mentioned it already in my talk, in my last talk. Ethics should be observed when using documents and materials and data and or sources of data. It is very important for you as an action researcher to be ethical in using the data that you have. Bias, and you should not change it para po sa atin because it's useless po. Kahit po yung data natin, alam na data is hindi siya pabor sa intervention na ginawa natin. The good thing about it is maybe this kind of intervention is not applicable to your learners. And it will still add to the pool of knowledge naman, hindi mawawalang bahala yung study or action research natin since although it's not favorable sa hypothesis natin or sa gusto nating gawin, still makaka-add naman siya ng knowledge as in general because there are a lot of aspects why this particular intervention that you use is not applicable to these learners. And so that's why we should be ethical. Okay, so let's move on first to the review. Let's review the 4 levels of scales of measurement. I know in your basic statistics in your undergrad, or some of you in your masters also, and some of you having your PhD, I know balik-balik na ni ang scales of measurement, but let's try to review it at we would know na dayon the data that we have and will identify what level of scales of measurement ito. So there are 4. The first one is nominal. The second one is ordinal. The third one is interval. And of course, the last one is ratio. We will talk first on the nominal. What is nominal? Nominal means in this level of measurements, the numbers in the variable only to classify the data. Numbers are used for labeling. So, yung number po represents some usually used for label. Yung number po nito is hindi naman sa walang value, but it signifies something. Halimbawa, if you have gender, you have male and female, you can have one as male, two as female. Tanong, bakit lang gamitin yung male or female? Sagot dyan, it's easier for you in encoding part. Kasi yung encoding natin, you usually, nag-i-encode tayo sa spreadsheet or sa SPSS. If you're familiar with the SPSS, I know all, if not all, then most of you are familiar with the SPSS. In the SPSS po, it's better if we will label or we will use numbers as label. Kaysa po, i-encode pa po natin yung male at female. So we would know that this one is male and 2 is female. Another example would be the hair color. I have a black, and then maybe some participants have blue, green, yellow, or hair color. So you can use 1 for black, 2 for the green, 3, and so on and so forth. So the numbers here are just used for labeling. Gets? So if the numbers are used for labeling, it's nominal levels of measurement. Next, the ordinal. In the ordinal naman, this this level of measurement depicts some ordered relationships among the variables observation. And then in the ordinal level, numbers not only serve as label, but also indicate some kind of ranking. This time, kung ang nominal po is just label lang, alam natin na 1 is male and 2 is female. In the ordinal po, they use numbers as label, pero may bigat po yun. Parang may ranking na nagaganap. I will give you an example. On a survey, you might code educational attainment. You can have 0 less than high school, 1 as some high school, 2 as high school degree, 3 as some college, 4 as college degree, 5 post-college. And then in this measure, obviously, the higher the numbers mean more education. So, mas mataas. Although, sabihin natin, ginamit siya na label. So, sabihin ko 4. So, it means, anong katumbas nito? So, college degree siya. So, college degree siya, we can say that it's higher compared to 3 because yung 3 natin is some college. O, halimbawa, in our lesson, the question or survey question sa estudyante natin, how do you feel about my lesson? Pwede natin gawin yung ordinal. 1, pwedeng not very happy or unhappy. We'll use, sorry. The question is, how do you feel about our lesson? So, 1 is very unhappy si estudyante, 2 is unhappy, 3 just so-so, yeah, middle naman yan, 4 is very just happy lang, and then 5 is very happy. So in that sense, if you are having survey to your learners, then they could, if they will answer 5 or 4, then you would know, ito pala yung feelings ng estudyante natin, ng estudyante mo sa lesson mo. And you would know na if it is 4 point something, it will get the average. If it's 4 point something, then you would know nga na mas maraming happy or very happy sa lessons mo compare sa hindi happy. That's also, that's on the analysis part na pala. Sorry. Okay. So next is, let's move on to the interval. In the interval level of measurement, not only classifies and orders the measurements, but it also specifies that the distance between each interval on the scale are equivalent along the scale from low interval to high interval. So one example for this is the measure of the temperature, of course, in Fahrenheit and Celsius. So the distance from 30 to 40 is the same as distance from 70 to 80. So the interval between values is adjustable. So we can say that this the distance from 30 to 40 is just the same with the 70 to 80. But in the interval level data can be in calculations, but we cannot compare them. Comparison cannot be done in the interval level. So I'll give you more examples on this on the interval, because we'll have short activities, and then maybe it will be clearer. Next, let's go to ratio. Ratio, in this level of measurement, the observations, in addition to having equal intervals, can have a value of 0 as well. But the 0 in this scale makes this type of measurement unlike the other types of measurement. Why? Because 0, a value of 0 means the complete absence of the trait. Mayroon na po yung parang may kabuluhan na po si 0. It's not it's not the same with the others. Because, okay, let's go to nominal. When we say 0, 0 could be used for 0 could be used, pwede natin siyang email, and 1 is female. So the number or the 0 can be used. And then for the nominal naman, or the ordinal rather, we can also use that. And then for the interval, for example, for the temperature, 0 is not the absence, because meron pa pong sumunod na mga na negative. Example, -1 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit has value pa. So here, when we say 0 here, it is the complete absence of the trait. So mostly, if you have quizzes or achievement test, pre-test, post-test, it's in ratio na po. The level of scales of measurement po niyan is ratio. Why? I'll give you an example. For multiple choice statistical final exam scores are here. 80, 68, 20, and 92 out of a possible 100 points. The data can be put in order from the lowest 20 to highest. Can we compare them? Yes. Does 0 has value? Very importansya yung 0 niya kasi when you will get a 0 in your exam, it means really 0. If you have a 100 item quiz or exam, then we can say is 0 and 100 100, and we can also say that the 50 is twice, or 100 is twice as your 50 score. So yeah, if you are doing your quantitative action research, the pre-test and post-test ratio na po yung value na yan. Yun yung usually when I attend seminars on especially on action research, sa statistical na part yung pag-enter na ng sa SPSS, most participants, even I, including sarili ko, medyo maano kami, we will question ourselves, ano ba yung levels of or skills of measurement, ganito si ganito. So by this, as a review, I hope we are now, or I am of help na ma-aware po tayo na when we talk about our achievement test, then more likely it's a ratio level of measurement. Okay, so I believe we're done. As a recap, there are 4 levels of measurement. The first one is nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. So how about let's do this activity I have mentioned earlier. Well, in this exercise, you are asked to decide which level of measurement of correct or nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio for each example. So what I want you to do, I want you to go to your chat box and comment your answer, and maybe give reasons also, para naman natin mapag-usapan or ma-prove natin kung bakit yun yung sinagot natin. Okay? So maybe I could give you 10 seconds or 20 seconds for each for each number, and then let's try to discuss kung bakit ganyan or bakit ganyan yung level of measurement niya. Sige. First, course grades. Course grades, we have A, B, C, D. Course grades, usually when you have courses, so usually your trainer will have an A grade and B or C and D. So yeah, you can actually start typing, or what level of measurement is that? Yes po. Okay, let's reveal. 10 seconds na siguro. Okay, so let's reveal. It is ordinal. Ordinal. Course grades po, the A, B, C, D, are indicators of quality of students' performance and are ordered. So this is an example of ordinal level of measurement. So more likely based on the quality of students or participants. So if you are A, so you are, we can say, depende. Hindi naman na-specify dito. Pwede ding D yung excellent student. So halimbawa lang, as a researcher, pwede kong sabihin, si A are excellent students. Si B, not so excellent, just so-so, and so on and so forth. So in this case, this is ordinal. Okay, so very good sa mga nakakuha. And then don't worry sa hindi nakakuha, there are still more to go. How about this one? Commute times. Commute times, it's in minutes, of course. Commute times from maybe from your school to your house. Yes, we have 10 seconds while I'm talking. Your 10 seconds starts now. Well, my commute times from I live in Iligan City. Share MECQ kami ngayon. The commute times is from here to my school is about 3 hours. How much is that in minutes? Maybe 180 minutes. Pero hindi po ako araw-araw umuwi. Weekly naman po. Pero I don't know po if sa what happened right now. Sana okay na po ito. Yes. Okay, so time's up. Let's reveal the answer. It's ratio po. Why? Minutes or some other unit of time like days, hours, and seconds is at ratio level of measurement because it has an absolute zero value and the difference between values is meaningful. So halimbawa, the difference between 60 and 70 minutes is the same as 10 and 20 minutes. And 20 minutes is at twice 40. So it means po, when we say yung commute times natin is 0, then wala po tayo, hindi po tayo nag-commute. Siguro, anong ginawa natin sa school tayo, nag-stay. That's why there's no commute times. So that's the point po. The 0 is the absence of the variables, the commute times in this matter. Next, how about the health status? Health status, we have excellent, average, or poor. So can you type your answer now? Let's try. Yeah, if you have, I believe I am, although umuubo ako ngayon, don't worry po, I am in excellent condition. Okay. Yes, so let's try to reveal what health status is. It's ordinal. Why? This is an example of an level of measurement because it consists of levels in order or magnitude. So, but the distance between levels is not quantifiable. So it's not possible for us to say or to determine whether the difference between excellent and average is the same with the magnitude as the difference between the average and the poor. And also, in coding, for halimbawa, gusto mo talaga ng health status, and in coding also, you can represent numbers from excellent, average, poor instead of writing it on your data sheet, not by numbers, maybe 3, 2, and 1. 3 is an excellent, 2 is average, and 1 is poor in that manner. Okay? So, meron pa sa hindi nakakasagot or sa naubusan ng oras. We still have 2 more to go. Let's try. How about gender? Na-discuss na po yan. Maybe 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yes, gender po is, yeah, I have mentioned earlier, nominal. Gender is at the nominal level of measurement because nominal variables allow a researcher to distinguish between 2 or more classes of an attribute by name, and there is no order associated with values on nominal variables. So, like what I mentioned earlier, yung gender na kinode mo as 1 and 2, male or female, it represents only, it classifies labels only. It does not mean na mas 2 months si female is mas stronger si female. It does not do that. It's in the ordinal naman if ganun na yung nangyari. Tama? Okay. So last one is body temperature. It's in degrees Fahrenheit. Nag-give ko na pala na example to. But here, the main reason why inulit ko to, because I mentioned already that this is interval. The temperature in degrees F is at the interval levels because there is no absolutes. Values of temperature cannot be expressed as ratios. Like what I have mentioned, after zeros, there are negative values, and negative values in Fahrenheit or in body temperature in Fahrenheit or in Celsius has values. So, sorry. But the temperature on the, we're familiar with the Kelvin when we are in high school, maybe our teachers convert the Fahrenheit and Celsius to Kelvin. This is the ratio level. Why? Because pag sabihin po nating 0 Kelvin, 0 po talaga yun. It means like walang the lowest, it does not have, there is an absence of the temperature. And 1, 2, 3. So talk about Kelvin. Okay? So I believe we are quite clear with this part. So, well, congratulations, everyone did a great job, but we're not done yet. We will move on to the next discussion or to the next part. The next part is, I have mentioned a while ago that it is very important for us to identify what are our sources of data and how are we going to identify sources of our data. So there are two types. We have the primary source, the primary source, and the secondary source. I'm going to discuss to you first our primary source. A primary source is anything that gives you direct evidence about the people, events, or phenomena you are researching. Primary sources will usually be the main objects of your analysis. Sa madaling salita, yung primary source po natin, ito po yung nasa research instrument po natin. Yun po yung primary source of data natin. Gets? Halimbawa, if you are researching for the past, you cannot directly access it to yourself because historians, I've known some historians na nagre-research sila on their research actually. They are dependent on the time where by the participants or the witnesses. It includes letters, photographs, or newspaper. But if you are researching something current, what we are doing as an action researcher in DepEd, for me personally, we are looking, our primary sources can either be qualitative or data that you collect during interviews, surveys, and experiments. Yun yung sabi ko, if I have an intervention, of course, as an intervention, meron po tayong research instruments. And then after that, your research, yung instruments natin, we have achievement test po, you have our interventions and all. These are now our primary. Yun po yun. Then now, in the qualitative action research, your primary source could be your primary source. Interview transcripts, recording of speeches, newspapers and magazines, social media posts on maybe on particular topics. So more likely qualitative research deals with social sciences or deals with the behaviors. Honestly, I haven't done an action research or a qualitative type of action research, but I'm very much willing to open my heart in qualitative, so I would know. But so let's move on. How about on the quantitative? These are empirical studies or statistical data. So these are your primary source of data. Okay. So since we're clear with our primary source, let's now move on to secondary source. What are secondary sources? Well, a secondary source, anything that describes, interprets, evaluates, and analyzes information from primary source. So when we say secondary source, these are now your books, articles that you have read or reviewed, so that it will help in your analysis, or it will help also support your primary source. What are the examples are books, articles, and documentaries that synthesize information on a topic. Next, synopsis and descriptions of artistic work. Another one, encyclopedias, textbooks that summarize information and ideas. Then reviews and essays that evaluate or interpret something. So therefore, your secondary sources are the sources that would somewhat support your primary, because it will help describes or interprets and evaluates some information from your primary sources. Okay, so I guess we're clear. So the types of data that we have are the primary source and secondary source. Now the question is, paano natin i-include, or how sure are we with our primary and secondary sources? Pwede ba siyang i-include sa action research natin? Pwede ba siyang i-support sa study mo? Well, dito na mag-i-insert si external and internal criticism. Lahat po ng research natin or lahat po ng data rather and sources, it should undergo external and internal criticism. Dapat ba ibang tao yung magagawa nito? Actually, you yourself would do it. Could do it as long as you have the guide on how to criticize your sources. First is we'll talk about external criticism. Well, it's sometimes called the lower criticism. Why? It's because the genuineness of the document and the form and appearance, and more particularly to question of authorship, while circumstances such as time, place, and purpose are being criticized. Halimbawa, if you have an article, so you will just check the date, kung ano bang date na to, pwede ba siyang i-include. So if you are an action researcher, then it should be, if you're doing it in 2020, at least yung mga articles natin or and past research na and include natin as our secondary source would be at least 10 years or 2010 up, right? And then this, and also the purpose. You're also going to check the source itself. Kasi marami po maraming sources online, but we're not sure if it's a good source. So that's why we have to do external criticism. Okay? Yeah. So I believe we are clear with external criticism. Let's move on now to internal criticism. Ano po tayo mag-criticize internally? Deep down. Okay. It is sometimes called as higher criticism. So the meaning, trustworthiness of the contents of the documents, the value and worth of its contents, its literal meaning, and the reliability of the statements themselves. This time, it is more on what kung ano na po yung laman ng sources natin. We're going to criticize that one. If okay ba siya i-include or reliable ba siya. Halimbawa, if you will have your primary source, maybe if you are doing interview, yes, in your interview, one way to internally criticize that is to check particular statements of your respondents. And then if it's relevant to your study. And another thing is that if it's a secondary sources, same, you will going to, of course, read the documents and data and try to ask ourselves if this contents is applicable to your study. Okay, so I believe we are clear with the external and internal criticism. So let's now move on po to the binary sorting and cleaning of data. So as a review lang muna. Oh, medyo mahaba-haba na yung discussion natin. As a review lang muna, we're done with levels of measurement. We're done with our data. What are the types of data? Kung saan natin pwedeng kukunin yung data natin. We have the primary source and the secondary source also. And the next is we have to do external and internal criticism with the data that we have. And this time, I'm going to talk about the preliminary sorting and cleaning of data. Halimbawa, meron na tayong data. Ano ang gagawin natin dito? Labay. Just kidding. Well, the best thing we could do is to sort it out and clean our data. So before encoding quantitative or qualitative data for analysis, we must first sort them to ensure that only those that will be useful for analysis are encoded. Why? What do you mean by that? Because before, for instance, when we administer questionnaires to large groups of students, some respondents may, simply write their name, did not answer the questionnaire, and some also may respond to only few items, just randomly. So therefore, pwede ang mangyayari, there's no response to your questions and incomplete response. Ang gagawin nun, we are going to exclude these questionnaires. So what if you only have 30 learners, respondents, and then yung 30 natin, hindi pa nagawa yun, hindi pa in-answer, or yung isa or dalawa hindi pa naayos na nasagutan yung questionnaires natin. So therefore, magkukulang na po yun. So that's why we need, anong gagawin? So we need to exclude the questionnaires and properly dispose of them so that only these complete ones will proceed to the encoding part. As much as possible though, we should not have exclude any data kasi yun, sayang po yun kung if ma-invalid siya. So anong gagawin? Simple lang. For example, if you administer the pre-test and the post-test or survey, the best thing we would do is we can simply look over the questionnaires when your learners or students is magpasa na. If magpasa na, then you will just check you if meron ba na bang name na complete na nasagutan ba lahat. Then if not, then you can just call the attention of the learners who have skipped the answer or who have forgot writing names or kung anumang data ang kulang. That's the simplest way to do. Kasi we don't want, like what I have mentioned earlier, we don't want to exclude any data. So yeah, that's how we sort our data. So since na-sort na natin, we're now sure, halimbawa, sure na tayo na itong data ko or ito yung mga questionnaires ko is okay na. Let's now move on the cleaning part. So once encoding has been completed, na-encode mo na yun, we will also have to go the process of cleaning. Ano ba yung cleaning natin? This refers to the process of modifying or removing data that are incomplete, incorrect, replicated, or entered in a wrong format. So we have to double check because kahit po ikaw na yung pinakamagaling na encoder, if we will not do the cleaning part, mayroong tendency po na yung data na in-encode natin is na-repeat siya or nagkamali talaga yung pag-encode natin. At anong mangyayari? Makaka-apekto po yun sa pag-analyze ng data. That's why. Okay, I will give an example. The main reason why we need to do this because we need to find out which data and points are erroneously entered and make the correction before the data are subjected to analysis. Sabi ko na nga po. So you have to make sure na yung data mo na encode mo ng tama. Because this is what we call, there is one example of this by expecting the so-called outliers. Ano yung outliers? These are extreme values, either too high or too low, that seem to be impossible. And I'll give you an example. Halimbawa, na-encode mo na. When you encode, you will do cleaning. So, when you do the cleaning, if you will check the pre-test, nakita mo yung score nila na pre-test. Merong, and then yung pre-test natin is 30 items. Tapos merong nakakuha ng 30 when you do the cleaning. Do you think it is possible to get 30? Posible yon. Pero if hindi ka if you did not do the cleaning, pwedeng ang pre-test pala is mali. So, if duda mo na pre-test lang, naka 30 na siya, over 30, that's perfect score, you will go to your questionnaire or to your data, i-check mo kung tama siya. What if 3 lang pala yon? Tapos na-encode mo nagkamali ka, so naging 30. So 30, so it has an effect na sa data mo for analysis. So that's why cleaning is very important. Pero question, what if 30 jud ang bata, then bright ang bata? Wala na tayong magagawa doon. So like what I have mentioned, if there are outliers, outliers, there are outliers. Just just leave as it is because it's normal to have it. Because maybe genius yun imong bata kay pre-test pa lang kay 30 na siya in that particular achievement test that you did in your action research. Okay, so since we're done now with the encoding, we are also done with the cleaning, so we can now ask po ba tayo code. Well, coding of quantitative instruments or items is done on spreadsheet. So you can have spreadsheet or SPSS if you're familiar with it. So doon po tayo mag-coding. So now, the question is how to code. Paano po tayo, paano natin i-enter sa, ano ba to? Sa spreadsheet yung data natin. So let's move on. We'll help you. I'll help you. Maybe give you an example on how to do it. So let's just say that we have the following data about a group of 20 learners. So your N here is 20. And of course, they have ID numbers, na-arrange mo na yan. They have their gender. They have also the score in English test. So the question is, paano mo ito i-code? So one way to code it is this is a simpler guide. Simpler lang po. If you have other sources or may ma-research kayo on other way of coding it, then much better. So this is one way for you to code quantitative data. Okay. First column, you have columns, tama? First column, you have also your maybe let's go back to this. There are 3 variables, tama? We have the ID number, the gender, and the English test. So columns na yan. There are 3 columns, 1, 2, 3. Your variables, you have the ID, you have the gender, and the score. What's the label or what's the variable label here? You have the ID number, the gender, and the test score. What would be value? So as is, kasi po yung value naman natin ng ID number change kung ano yung ID number mo, yun na yun. And then, for the gender, dito na po natin gagamitin yung nominal level of measurement. Since level of measurement is nominal, so we can, instead of, we can represent male and female as 1 and 2. Can label, we can say that the value 1 means male and that the 2 means female. And then what type of measurement? Of course, it is nominal. The same with the ID. Okay. Next, how about the third column? The third column, your score, and of course the variable with that would be test score, as is ang value, kasi, and then of course like what I have mentioned, if it's test scores, it's more likely it's ratio. So this is now how you are going to code your data. Ito na po yung nakita. If meron tayong data, pwede tayong we can arrange it this way para mas madali natin i-analyze siya. So, well, sino ba yung mag-analyze? It's depend. Pwedeng ikaw or pwedeng someone that you know na pwedeng mag-analyze ng data mo. Okay? Or the SPSS itself. Or spreadsheet or Microsoft also can, ano ba, Excel, yeah, could actually analyze your data. So next, how about the qualitatives? I always talk about the quantitative because when we deal about numbers, quantitative kasi yun. But how about the qualitative? In the qualitative, analysis of qualitative data obtained from open-ended questions, interviews, observations, and documents does not involve statistical techniques. So this is simpler and more straightforward. So, yun nga. So responses are encoded word for word or verbatim according to item number. And each response is then tagged by codes and then of course the source. So example, halimbawa, meron tayong sample responses. So we have the question. First question is, ano ang dahilan ng iyong pagpigil sa pag-aaral? So you have the ID number of the learners and then yung response. So ano man yung response niya, pwedeng kung nakasulat man, so yun din yung isusulat natin. If it's interview type, kung ano yung na-record natin, narinig natin, yun din po yung i-encode natin. So that's that's already encoding part of the qualitative data. Diba? Madali lang yung qualitative. So sa quantitative, medyo nagugulahan pa siguro tayo. Don't worry. We have activities and I'll let you do it. Okay. So exercise, like what I have mentioned. So we have here math quiz scores of 20 grade 9 students in a remedial program. So first is I want you to make a model like this. Sample coding guide for quantitative instruments or items, and then ipakita ninyo, not really ipakita, but I hope you're doing it on your laptop or pwedeng sa papel if you have, on how you make your encoding or your code book. So we have section A and section B. We have male, female, and then the scores. So obviously, let's count muna the variables that we have. I think there are 4 variables. Okay, let's sections. One na yan, section. That's already 1 variable. Male, female. That's another one. And then the scores, another one. That's another variable. So ano yung pang-apat? Well, the pang-apat is the ID number of these learners. So let's try. Or I'm gonna give you maybe what 20 seconds, 20, 30 seconds maybe. So your timer starts now. You can make na lang po on your own po sa laptop ninyo or sa ano natin sa notebook pa po natin, and then if possible, then if tama, then we can keep it as our notes for our future use. And then if hindi naman, don't worry po, I will reveal the answer and let's discuss why the answer is like this. Okay. You just have to remember that there are 4 variables, and that 4 variables are sections or the ID muna. And then we have the sections, we have also the gender, and lastly are the scores. I guess we're done. Okay, thank you. Sa hindi pa po, don't worry po, sa hindi pa po natapos, we'll reveal this at least. Malalaman nyo naman po yung sagot. Okay, let's try. This is now your coding guide for your math quiz data. So there are 4 columns, sabi ko nga po. Why 4 columns? Because there are 4 variables. Yung ID natin, yung gender, yung section, and score. Ano ba yung variable label niyan? Of course, the first column, the ID is the ID number. Gender is gender, of course. The section is the section, and your score is the test score na ginawa nyo. And then your value, si ID number as is lang yan, it's kung ano man yung ID number ng bata, hindi naman siya, no need naman siya ma-change yung value niyan. And then 1 is, yeah, we can assign using the nominal. We can assign 1 and 2 for male or female. And then this time, for the third column, we can also have 1 and 2 for the section. So when you say 1, section A na yan. So 2, section B na yan. Ganon. And then your test scores is as is kasi hindi baguhin yung scores natin. So your value label, so we have mentioned, and then yung level of measurement. Of course, ID is nominal, gender is nominal, section is nominal, and then your ratio, your test scores is ratio. So now the encoded data should be encoded in the spreadsheets. I know we only have like a short time doing this activity, pero ito yung dapat magiging itsura niyan when you encode this in your spreadsheet or SPSS. I think on on your SPSS you can encode this data in this manner. Okay, let's try. Let's reveal. Hey, I have mentioned there are 4 column. Tama? Port, ID, gender, section, quiz score. And then yung ID number, yan, depende. 1 to, 1 to 20 kasi 20 naman. Yung gender, so it means kung 1, male pala to lahat. 2, female, and then same, so on. And then section, arranged also 1, that is section A. And then 2, that's section B. That, kasi linagyan nyo na yung label. And then, yung scores naman, o scores nung nakuha nung mga bata. Okay? So, is it clear? Let's go back. Halimbawa, may data ka. Yung data na nakuha mo na dalawang section, we have section A and section B. Siguro yung intervention mo is comparison. Or in this example, this is a remedial class or a remedial program. You want to know if nung section ang mas nakakuha ng higher scores sa remedial class. So we can have sections, the male and a female, of course, and then we also have the scores. Ito yung itsura ng data mo. But when you put it on the spreadsheet or SPSS, you can use this guidebook and you can now have this. So makakita mo na, this is now your data. So at least when you analyze it or when you have someone analyze your data, mas madali na lang po niya yun maintindihan at ma-analyze. And then Viola, you will have your data for analysis and your analysis for your research for your discussion. Okay, so we're done with this part. So again, we'll have a recap of everything that we have discussed. Today, we talk about the sources that are needed to use for our action research. We have the primary source and secondary source, and it's very also important that these sources should be internally and externally criticized. And also we have reviewed the scales of levels of measurements, which I believe very important kasi dun po talaga ako based on my observation, dun po kami when we attended research seminars on identifying which level of measurement yung data natin. Kasi pag na-identify na po natin, mas madali po siya i-analyze. And lastly, you have done also on how to sort and clean your data. And we also did some exercise in which you yourself encode your data based on the guide that you have made. So again, everyone, thank you for listening. I hope you have a great day. My name is Warner B. Reponte. So I'll introduce my school again. I'm from Sultan Ali Dimaporo Memorial Integrated School located in Bauyan, SN Lanao del Norte. Project ko sa akong school. And of course, you can actually go to chat or message me on my personal email, reponte.warner@gmail.com, if you have further questions for this particular topic. And wish you have a great day and